And I love the Steve Jobs story about the iPhone because you don't have to make like massive bets. You make these small bets, and then you see does it work. And I think in life, you don't have to sell the farm. You just have to take these small steps, but you do have to take action because I think thinking can only take you so far. It's about getting your hands dirty and doing something. Would you like to talk a little bit about that, Alex?
Yeah, sure. So that's based off of research and a story done by Morton Hansen and Jim Collins. And they have a framework which is called fire bullets, then cannonballs. And I think this is helpful for change makers that we sometimes think, okay, I'm going to launch my new idea into the world, whether that's a podcast or a service or a coffee shop. And you feel like, okay, I've got one shot to do it. And I've got to put all my eggs in one basket, just go big. But actually, what they say is no, what you should do is before you fire the cannonball, which is that sort of like one big bet, no, fire lots of bullets first. Fire small tests to see, are you sort of on the right track? Are you hitting that bullseye first? Then you can kind of titrate, make sure you're on the right path, and then go big with confidence. And so the story about Steve Jobs and the iPhone is that, when he pulled the iPhone out of his pocket, it seemed like a big, bold bet, a big cannonball. But it was based off of a lot of small tests over a few years. They started off with saying, here's the iPod. Would people be willing to carry this extra device around in their pocket? And of course, the answer was yes. Then the question was, well, would people be willing to buy music in an online store, the iTunes store? And of course, the answer was yes. And then they played around with different formats and sizing and design of the iPod, and took that closer and closer, and then ready for the iPhone. Now, of course, it was still a risk when Steve Jobs did it, but it was way less of a risk than we tend to think that it was, all because he first fired bullets and then went big with the cannonball.
Yeah, and I just love that idea of just even in your career, or if you're trying to start a venture, just do a little experiment, see if there's interest, get the feedback, and make it this sort of virtuous loop. And I love this thing with tech; they're always trying to put something out there, the minimum viable product, see what it's like, get the feedback, enhance the product. And I think in your life or change making, just having that sort of that loop, the continuous feedback, and as you were saying, never resting on your laurels, always trying to gather information, see where the market is. Because I think if you get too comfortable, then you're not giving your audience or your customers what they want.